let you stay on stage, please, and can you call Geena up to join her? And we'll take some questions from the audience. I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions for these two extraordinary women. Who wants to start? Are the men too intimidated now? Women up! Okay, we have a man right there. Hello. Can we send out a mic up for you?
Yeah, to the man that. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jason, and I work as a mechanical engineer. And I work in a very hyper-masculine industry, so to speak. And I just recently came out on Facebook. And one of the biggest influences I have had is Miss Geena Rocero. So, really love you. Yeah. So my question is, um, I know that transitioning is really very hard. More than the mental or the emotional, it's really very highly physical. So what are your plans to um, help those people who are undergoing the same dilemma? Or how do we encourage more medical practitioners to actually engage in transgender health and care? Because I think that the Philippines really lack on that kind of um, issue. Since we are talking about 2030 now, so what are your plans?
Plans. Thank you for that question, and I'm touched. Thank you. Keep pursuing that truth. Congratulations. So I remember when I was 15 years old in the Philippines, we were self-medicating. There was no access to hormones, like proper access to it. Is it the safest thing to do? Definitely not. But it's a form of survival. There's certainly not a lot of conversation that's happening in the Philippines, specifically even just basic needs and hormone access. What's happening now in the United States and a lot of progressive places is this conversation about, getting access to hormone treatments. People think it's a cosmetic thing. It's the thing called transition-related medical needs. And there's a lot of movements that's happening in health insurance in the United States that hopefully that gets magnified in other places. Specifically with what I'm doing with Gender Proud, it's, the advocacy specific of that is gender recognition law. I think it would allow people to access, when you have identity documents that match who you are, it's easier to access, health benefits, easier to access bank documents. So I believe gender recognition law. First, we need to have an anti-discrimination bill that protects people. I think gender recognition law is something that empowers people to self-sustain themselves. It's to access this, as I said, like if you want to start a business, if you're applying for a job, imagine this for a moment, like if a trans woman who has not changed her document, you're applying for a job and you're presenting your ID, the first thing that that person is interviewing you will be looking at your documents that doesn't match, and you'll be divulging about the most personal thing in your life. So how could you confidently apply for a job if you don't have documents? So all of these things is rolled around gender recognition law, but certainly there needs to be more conversation about health access and hormones and surgery-related benefits. That's what I'm doing. It's like talking on and on. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Can we move on to the next question? Anyone? Right here.
Hi, my question is for Sheila. Oh, yes. I'm Victoria Cadillo. I'm from Cebu, and I am a happy single mom. And at the same time, I was a volunteer. I am still a volunteer back in my hometown in Leyte for the first 6 months after the typhoon of Haiyan. And I just want to know what you think about how people think, or even our own mothers, what they think of us being new moms right now, that they think, I home, or I should be focusing on one thing, or, taking care of my kid, which I'm still doing, managing things at the same time.
Victoria, it's this balance around respecting our parents, which is so part of our culture, as we know. When I was growing up, I had designated professions that my parents expected of all of us. As we know, my sister was supposed to be the dentist, the brother was supposed to be the doctor, I was supposed to be the engineer, and I was supposed to be the lawyer. I am not a lawyer today. And I respect my parents, but you have to be true to yourself. And I often will take input, and then at the end of the day, I have to make the decision to trust my gut about what it is that I'm passionate about and what I believe in and what I want to pursue. Now, some of those decisions are always going to be right, and I've got to learn from that. It's a choice we make as adults. We make those choices, and they're not always going to be right, and I get up, back up again, and I learn. So I think it's that balance, but it's having a dialogue, it's having that respect to kind of say, we can agree to disagree in the most respectful way you can, and test things out. So that's sort of, it's a hard one, I would say, because I, in the early years, really fought my parents about not being a lawyer, and I'm so glad I did. But not knocking lawyers in the room. It's a great profession, it just wasn't for me.
Can we take one last question? Okay, we have someone in the middle. Can you pass the mic, please? Hi, good afternoon. I'm Sigrid from City Leadership Foundation. My question is for the both of you. Recently, I had a debate with a colleague of mine about gender quota. Of course, there are companies and organizations that are imposing that have policy like gender quota for women, like 40% of the leadership should be composed of women and things like that. I'd like to know your view about gender quota for women, and second, the inclusion of transgender women in this said quota.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that question. It's a very timely conversation about gender. I mean, this is a thing that's one of our core, so we need to have these conversations, we need to have these nuanced conversations about this. Specifically, I think that the last question, transgender women are women. This is who we are. We say, I'm a woman, so I should be in the women's space. I need to be recognized as a woman, which thankfully I am, have all those rights in the United States and legally recognized as such. Regarding quota, I mean, we all know. I mean, there needs to be gender balance. I think the world would be a lot more different to have the understanding why we should have more women in workplaces, and with women like Sheila would be in places where women could lead organizations. Just to change the dynamic, I think it's important, the cultural dynamics, why that's important.
Sometimes the cultural barriers and mindsets are difficult that the entry point is a quota to try and just get change to happen. But the problem with quotas is that long-lasting behavioral change might not be sustainable. Instead, if that's the approach initially, then what can happen is a backlash that just disagrees. And so even though you require the statistic, the fundamental belief system doesn't change. So I think for some cultures, it's a forcing function as a starting point. I know Prime Minister is doing that, for example, in Japan. But he's also very aware that unless you tackle the mindset, you've got to address those issues that actually result in sustainable behavioral change in how women are treated. So I think, and whether, to answer your question, it depends on the situation of supporting it, but fundamentally it's not enough to just support us. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you. And thank